Record on the state of Ohio versus Audrey Cole is 21 CR 6643. At this point, we've gotten through opening statements. So, state of Ohio, call your first witness.
Thank you. State call Josie.
Go ahead and stand over there and raise your right arm.
Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. You may be seated.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the record, would you tell us your name and the address of your employer, please?
My name is Josie Day. The address of the office is 43 2nd Street Southeast, Carrollton, Ohio, 44615.
Okay. Who do you work for?
Sheriff Williams, Carroll County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. And what do you do at the?
I work in the communications division as a 911 dispatcher.
Okay. How long have you been a 911 dispatcher?
I got full-time in May 26th of 2019. I started part-time in 2018, August.
Okay. And what's your current position now?
A 911 dispatcher.
Okay. Are you full-time or are you part-time?
Full-time.
Okay. And what are the duties that a 911 dispatcher does here in Carroll County?
My main duties require me to answer 911 calls as well as non-emergency calls and obtain pertinent information from the callers to quickly dispatch the correct emergency service or services to the correct location and or transfer them to the correct agency for them to do so.
Okay. And did you receive any training to have that position?
I did. Upon hire, I had to complete and certify for emergency medical dispatching within 6 months. I am CPR certified. I have to recertify every 2 years to stay current. And yearly by the state, we're required to do 8 hours of minimum continuous education training.
Okay, and when you say continuous education, what kinds of things are you continually being educated on?
We can pretty much do anything. There's some things that our supervisor and 911 coordinator send us to do training on. It could be anything from workplace harassment to police pursuits, anything pretty much that we could.
Would those include topics that come up in the course of
Our job?
Of your job? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Did you receive any specialized training in how to be a 911 dispatcher? Was there a special school that you go to, or is there, or is it just
no.
on-the-job training?
No, there is, we have to sign off. We are trained for 6 months. We have to sign off on everything that we learn to make sure that we understand it. Answering 911 calls, like emergency medical dispatching, the certification for that. We have to sign off that we are comfortable with learning how to do everything, and we have to go through scenarios and calls and basically pass a test to certify for that to do our job.
Okay.
And if we can't pass the test, then we don't get hired.
Okay, so there is testing, there
Yes.
is education and a testing component.
Yes.
And the question is your education and your testing current?
Yes.
Is it in good standing?
Yes.
Okay, and so, I guess, tell us what dispatch is.
What dispatch is?
Yeah, where you work or how it works. How is a 911 call received?
The civilian calls in and we answer it and we get their name, address, and location and what is going on.
Okay, and what do you do with that information?
We have to log and input it into our our computer system known as CAD.
Okay, and what does CAD stand for? If you know.
I can't remember at
Okay.
this time.
So, but is it a way that calls are recorded or logged?
Yes.
Okay, and do you know what happens to that information once you log it?
It goes into the CAD system for, I mean, it's public knowledge, but some things are redacted for personal reasons, like the social security number, stuff like that we input into it are redacted when we give it to the public, but it's for our officers and the public.
Okay, so you receive information and you document it somehow?
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, and then there's a record that's kept of that, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so when you say you enter it into your CAD system, is that some type of computer?
Yes.
Okay, and so is that how a record is made?
Yes.
Okay, and what about the actual call that somebody actually makes? Is it databased or is it logged somehow?
Yes, all of our calls are recorded, 911 and non-emergency calls.
Okay, and so what happens to those recordings? Where are they kept?
Our 911 coordinator keeps track of all those calls.
Okay. Okay. Why do you record your calls?
So we know exactly, it's more of a record to state exactly what they're stating, so we can't try to change what they had said or stated or anything like that. In our way, how we interpret things, we actually know what they said by what they're stating, and we can go back and listen to it. And there's some things that come up in court that happened 6 months, 2 years ago, things like that. We can go back on them and know exactly what they said, so it's just a record to keep things more accurate.
Okay. Do you know how long those records are kept or the calls are kept?
I don't know.
Okay. Are you responsible in any way of removing items or doing any record-keeping purposes in the administration of those recordings, or whether it's the CAD or whether it's the recording?
Me personally, I'm not responsible for that.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to ask you, can you recall May 3rd, 2021?
Yes,
Were you working that day?
I was.
Were you working at the Carroll County Sheriff's Department?
I was.
And were you a dispatcher on that day?
I was.
Do you remember what shift you were working?
Afternoon shift.
Okay, and what hours of the day is the afternoon shift?
I believe that day I worked from 3 to 11,
Okay,
but our other afternoon shift is 2 to 10.
Okay, so there's two different afternoon shifts?
Yes.
Okay, so when you say the time frames, is that in the morning or in the afternoon?
Afternoon.
Okay, and so do you recall, again, what shift you were working that night?
3 to 11.
Okay, and during a normal shift and a shift on that night, are you alone or by yourself?
I am not. We always are required to have another dispatcher with us.
Okay, was there another dispatcher there with you that night?
There was.
Okay, and on that night, did you have the occasion to answer a 911 call from 6344 Arbor Road?
Yes.
And what was, can you tell us how the call came in?
The call came in on 911. I answered, and I asked the individual their name, their address, their phone number, and what was going on.
Okay, what was the nature of the call?
I answered the call. There was a female who stated that at 6344 Arbor Road that her boyfriend was hitting her in the head and she shot him.
Okay. How did you know the call came from 6344 Arbor Road?
It populated on our map as well as she told me the address.
Okay, and when you mean by population, what does that happen? What does that entail?
So when we receive a 911 call, we have an automated location system that automatically populates 911 calls after 30 seconds or so.
Okay, and how is it populated? How do you know that it's populated?
I can see it on my mapping system.
Okay, so you have a mapping system. Could you describe for the jury what that mapping system looks like?
It basically looks like the satellite view on Google Maps, pretty much. We can see the top view, not very much a street view, but we can see the top view of all the addresses, and they're specifically, they have the addresses right on top of the housing or driveway, and all the road names, state routes, and they're marked individually with what they are.
And are they marked, how are they marked? With an address or some number or a phone number or?
They're marked by the numerics, and the road names are marked by their road names, and colors. There's red for state routes, blue for county roads, and like a light teal for the other township roads. As well as we can hover over the address and see who the owner is of that address, and we can see what jurisdiction for fire and EMS. And it also, I believe, tells us now what electric company as well is for that jurisdiction.
Okay, and then on May 3rd, 2021, did 6344 Arbor Road appear to populate?
I believe so.
Okay. And then you also indicated the caller identified that as the actual address calling from, is that correct?
Yes, she did.
Okay. Were you able to determine the caller's identity?
Yes, she told me her name.
Okay, and who did she tell you her name was?
Aubrey Branch.
Okay, and could you tell from when you received the call whether it came from a cell phone, a landline, or some other type of device?
It usually tells us on the 911 call if it's received from a landline or a mobile device. I do not remember which one it was,
Okay.
but I believe it might have been a cell phone.
Okay. Do you remember about what time you received the call?
1703.
Okay, and 1703 is in normal time. About what time?
5:03 p.m.
Okay, 5:03 p.m. Because I don't have a clock that has 17 on it. Okay.
Apologies.
So it was about 5:03. But
Yes.
in your work, you use military time.
Yes.
Okay. And so again, what was the nature of the caller? What did the caller tell you happened?
When I asked her, after getting her name, address, and phone number, I asked her what was going on. She advised that her boyfriend was hitting her in the head, so she shot him.
Okay. Did you get any other information?
I did.
What did you get?
I asked her where she shot him. She stated that she shot him in the chest. I asked him if he was still breathing. She said that she was unsure he was outside laying on the ground. And then I put her on hold for about 10 seconds to relay a little bit of information to my partner on shift with me, Dispatcher Gifford. And she got our deputies and EMT to stage by.
Okay, and so I guess that was the next question. When you put somebody on hold, you told your coworker what you had going.
Yes.
Okay. What did you do then?
I told her to do that, and then I got back on the phone and I continued getting more information from the caller.
Okay, and is that standard procedure in 911 dispatching?
Depending on the call, yes.
Okay, so it's so that I'm clear, standard procedure to let somebody else get help going, so to speak, and then you to go back on with your caller.
If our other dispatcher is not busy, they can assist us depending on the call. And depending, I mean, I can transfer her to EMT to get an ambulance, but in that specific call, we wouldn't do something like that. We would just have our partner do it if they weren't busy, so we can obtain information and stay on the line with them until emergency services got there.
Okay, and did your partner do that for you?
She did.
Okay, and do you know what resources that you requested or that you felt were necessary to be dispatched?
Our deputies and EMT was their jurisdiction.
Okay, and EMT is who?
It's one of the squads for Carroll County.
Okay, so it's an ambulance company?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you have to let the ambulance know where to respond?
Yes.
And that's what your partner did?
Yes.
Okay. Who let the deputies know where to respond?
My partner.
Okay, all right. And so what happened then? You got back on the line, and what happened next?
I asked her if she was still armed, and she said yes, and I asked her if she could please put the gun away, and she advised that her gun was put away and she was unarmed.
Okay. Could you tell from any of the demeanor from the caller?
She seemed, at first, when I had asked her, she had quickly said, my boyfriend was punching me in the face and I shot him, he's dead. But I couldn't quite understand her, and I was trying to make sure I was right, so I said, I'm sorry, what? And then she said, my boyfriend was hitting me in my face and I shot him. So at first it was like rushed, but then she seemed calmer.
Okay. Do you know how long you were on the call?
About 12 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay. And can you tell us why you were on the call so long?
I was trying to remain on the line with her until our deputies got there.
Okay. And so it would have taken about that long before you would have gotten off the call, before someone else arrived, the deputies arrived?
Not all situations we stay on the line with the caller, but for this certain one I wanted to, for officer safety reasons and because of the how the call came in.
Okay. Okay. What happened while you were on the call?
I was asking her if he was breathing, if he had a pulse. She was also advising me that her head had hurt, so I was trying to give her a little bit of pre-arrival instructions for her possible head injury that she had. She stated to me that she was bleeding, so I advised her to put a clean cloth over that and another one over that if it gets blood-soaked. She went to go check on she went to go check on her boyfriend who was outside. She stated that he was laying face down, and I kept asking if he was breathing, and she went back inside, and she advised me that her 3-year-old was in the house sleeping, and that was the only child in the home, because I had asked her if that was the only child in the house. She had said yes. I asked her if she was intoxicated, under the influence of anything. She said no. That they were just arguing, and he started hitting her in the head, and that's when he tried to come after her, and she shot him. She stated to me that she also had PTSD, and he had PTSD.
Those types of questions that you asked and staying on the line and asking those questions, is that part of your training? Are you supposed to do that?
On certain calls, yes, and as an officer safety reason,
Okay.
and to update EMT too.
Okay, so my next question then is, what did you do with that information as you learned it?
I basically repeated some of the things, and I let my partner know so she can relay that information to our officers.
Okay. And then at what point did you hang up with the caller?
When I knew that Deputy Licht was on scene.
Okay, and how would you know a deputy arrived at the scene?
She told me on the phone that the deputy got on scene, as well as they radio when they're on scene when they get there.
Okay, so you were able to monitor the radio traffic?
My partner was, yes, but I could also hear him in the background on the phone.
Okay, so you had 2 sources of information when a deputy arrived, is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. And that call, was that call recorded?
Yes,
The call from 6344?
yes,
Is that recording still maintained and on file with the Carroll County Sheriff's Department?
yes,
Okay, and how do you know that?
because I have a copy of it, but I know that because of my 911 coordinator. I know that they have to keep at least a year, but I don't know how other many years they have to keep, but I know at least we have the recordings from this year and last year.
And so did you have the occasion to make a copy?
I did.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
The hand was been marked for purposes of identification, states Exhibit 1. Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is it?
It is the copy of the 911 recording.
And is that the copy that you made?
Yes,
And what copy of 911 recording is it?
the day of the shooting.
Okay, so from 6344 Arbor Road.
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, if we may.
You may.
Yeah.
May 3rd, 2021, 17 hours, 3 minutes, 37 seconds.
Now, that introductory, is that part of the recording in the software, of the recording of the calls at the Sheriff's Department?
This is the only recording I have heard, so I'm not sure if that's how they specifically go, but when we listen to them in our dispatch room, they're not quite like that. So I don't know if that's something that's just kept as a record for 911 coordinator. I'm not sure.
Okay, so you have the ability, as you're sitting at your terminal, to hear a recording or play a recording, correct?
Yes, for up to 8 hours.
Okay, but do you have any control over how it records it in the system?
No.
So if it has an introductory for a date and time, that would be part of something beyond your control, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Carroll County 911, can you please fire the medic?
Ready.
What's your address?
6344 Arbor Road.
And what's your name?
Audrey Branch.
And what's a good phone for you?
409-256-8626.
And what's going on?
My boyfriend was punching me in my face and I shot him. He's dead.
I'm sorry, what was that?
My boyfriend was hitting me and punching me in my head and I shot him.
You shot him?
Yes, I shot
Where?
him in his chest.
Okay, is he still breathing?
He's outside now. I haven't been out there to check on him.
Okay.
My whole head is bruised up.
Okay, hang on just 1 second for me, ma'am. Stay on the line.
All right.
What are you doing at this point?
I am speaking with my other dispatcher to get deputies and EMT to stage.
Okay, ma'am, do you still have the gun?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Where is your boyfriend at right now?
He's outside, man in front of the house.
Okay. Can you please put the gun away?
My gun is put up,
Okay.
and I'm unarmed.
Okay. Can you tell if he's moving?
He's he was gasping for air and stuff. I don't think he's moving anymore.
And what did you shoot him with?
I shot him with my rifle.
Okay. And you said you shot him in the chest, correct?
That's right.
Okay. And you said he's outside?
Yeah, he's outside, laying outside in grass, right in front of the house.
Okay. What is his name?
Matthew Mott.
Matthew Mike?
Mott, M-O-T-T.
M-O-T-T? Okay. Can you go outside to check and see if he's still breathing?
Yeah.
Are you checking on him?
He's laying face down in the ground, so I'm trying to check.
Okay,
There's blood
can you check
all
to
over.
see if he has a pulse? Okay. Can you check for a pulse for me or anything like that?
I'm checking.
Do you see his chest rising and falling or anything? You're advising he's
No.
laying flat down?
He's laying flat down, face down. Should I turn him over?
If you need to stop the bleed, do you think he might be breathing at all? You said you don't feel a pulse or anything?
No. My head is like really hurting right now.
Okay.
I'm trying to.
Okay. Well, then if you don't believe that he's breathing or anything like that, I mean, just wait until paramedics get there. We also have officers around to you. Okay.
I'm not messing with him anymore. Then he's face down in front of the house. I'll wait till he gets.
You don't feel a pulse or anything?
No,
Right.
not that I can tell.
Okay.
My head is hurting.
Okay. Well, we have units and an ambulance en route to you as well, ma'am. And what did you advise your name was again?
I'm sorry?
What did you advise your name was again?
My name?
Yes.
My name is Audrey Branch.
Ivory?
Audrey.
Audrey. Okay. Audrey.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And you advise you no longer have the gun, correct?
No, I put my gun back. and I took my magazine out.
Okay.
My baby, I still have a baby. I have my baby here asleep inside, and she's still asleep.
You have a daughter in the house?
Yes, ma'am.
How old's your daughter?
She's 3.
She's 3? Is that the only
Yes.
child in the home?
Yes, right now, she's the only one here.
Okay.
5 months.
Are you intoxicated or anything, or under the influence of anything?
No, because we were arguing before, and then it just attacked me in my head and stuff. So my rifle was right under the bed, and I grabbed it because he was coming after me, and I shot him. I shot him in the chest.
Okay. And this just happened?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So he was hitting you and that's when you did it? Where is the gun located at?
It's under my bed.
It's under your bed?
Yep, that's marked.
Okay, but it's unloaded?
Yep.
Okay. Are you able to meet the officers outside?
Yes, ma'am. Are they here?
They should be pretty close.
I had to call before, like a month ago for somebody to come out here.
For a domestic situation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What are your injuries? What on your head? Are you bleeding from anywhere or anything like that?
My forehead. My
Your
forehead is bleeding. Let me see. I have, busted lip. I have knots all around my face, but he's punching in my face.
Okay. But you're not, are you bleeding from anywhere in your head or anything like that?
I have, let me see. I don't know. I haven't done anything to it, but it looks like, it's just pulling up blood, so you probably cut it.
Okay, do you have a clean cloth or something that you can put on your head?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you can try to put a clean cloth or something like that on your head. That way to try to stop the bleeding there. And don't remove the cloth if it gets blood soaked. Put another one on top of it.
Okay.
Try to slow down the bleeding there on your head, okay?
Yes, ma'am. I have, he has PTSD.
He has
PTSD. I have, I've been diagnosed with adjustment disorder. It's just, PTSD.
Okay.
We're both better. I mean, I'll show the cops whenever they get here, but there's a hole in the wall where he knocked my head into the wall, and that's when he started punching me. And then from there, I just got my rifle under the bed and just got up, and he was coming back towards me, and I shot him.
Okay. Well, our unit should be there very shortly.
I hear sirens.
Do you? Okay. And we'll have the ambulance get you checked out too.
Okay.
Are you outside?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to check him again. I didn't. I think he's gone.
Okay. Do you see our units anywhere or hear any sirens?
I hear sirens up the road.
Okay.
And he's starting to get discoloration in that face. Turn blue.
Okay. You don't want to do CPR or anything?
I can try to turn him over. You try.
Did you turn him over?
I'm trying.
And you're for sure he doesn't have a pulse? Do you have anything to try to stop the bleeding? Where's he
No, his, ex, let me see. It's not really, let me see. I don't feel a pulse.
Okay, and he's not breathing or anything. Did you want to do CPR? Do you know how to do CPR?
Yeah, I vaguely remember, but he's not, there's no movement, rise and fall of the chest.
You don't have to. You don't have to do CPR if you don't want to, but if you want to, I can walk you through it.
Okay, yeah, I'll try.
Okay. Okay, listen carefully. I'm going to tell you what to do. Make sure he's flat on his back on a hard surface, okay? Kneel by his side. Put the heel of your hand on the center of their chest, right in between the nipples. And put your other hand on top of that hand. Push down hard and fast, at least 2 inches in depth, allowing the chest to return to its normal position between each pump. And try to pump twice every second, at least 100 to 120 compressions per minute.
Oh, Sheriff just pulled up. I'm gonna try it.
Okay, the sheriffs are out there with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's gone. He's gone. The sheriff is here now.
Okay, are you okay to disconnect with me?
What are you? Nothing. Okay.
May 3rd, 2021, 17 hours, 16 minutes, 1 second.
Okay, Dispatcher Day, having heard that recording, does that recording truly and accurately reflect the call that you answered on May 3rd, 2021?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and any indication that that call had been modified or changed in any way from when you were on the call as it happened?
No.
Okay, the content of that recording is what was received into the dispatch center?
Yes.
Okay, and I have no other questions. Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. A, you can step down, thank you. Are you anticipating needing Ms. Day further today?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, you are dismissed for the day then, thank you.
She has an exhibit.
Oh, yeah, Britt, leave the exhibit here, I'm sorry, I didn't even see you had it. Ms. Day? We need that. Let's go ahead and hand it back to Steve. If that's our copy. Okay, State of Ohio, your next witness.
Statement called Deputy Erik Licht.
If you would, go ahead and raise your right hand.
Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated.
Deputy, for the record, would you tell us your name and address of your employer, please?
It's Deputy Erik Licht, and it's Carroll County Sheriff's Office, and we're at 43 2nd Street Southeast here in Carroll.
Okay, and you're employed at the Sheriff's Department, correct?
I am, sir, yes.
What do you do at the Sheriff's Department?
Currently assigned to the Patrol Division, so go out and patrol the county, answer all calls for service, investigate crimes.
How long have you been a deputy sheriff?
I was sworn in February of 2010, so it'll be coming up on 12 years now.
Okay, And have you always worked at the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, or have you worked other places?
Just with the sheriff's office here.
Okay. And are you certified in the state of Ohio in the field of law enforcement?
Yes, sir, I am.
Would you briefly tell the members of the jury how you obtained that certification and what you had to do to be a certified peace officer?
Went through the 6-month training academy, passed basic training, and then took the state certification test. At the end, passed that test, and then every year we're required to complete so many hours of continual professional training.
Okay, and is that certification in good standing?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, do you have any other specialized training in law enforcement that you've received as part of being a deputy sheriff?
I did go through, it's been a couple of years now, but the sheriff did put me through a crisis intervention training out at Tusk County. Also went through some corrections academy. Last year went through a program to get my small pilot certificate for our county drone that we fly occasionally. And then outside of just regular yearly training.
With your, strike that, what shift do you customarily work?
Right now I'm on the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift, so day shift.
Okay. And prior to working as a road deputy, did you work in another department of the sheriff's department, or have you always been a road deputy?
No, when I was first sworn in, I was part-time in the jail, so I was part-time corrections.
Okay. And then when you, how did you go to be a road deputy full-time then?
Saw that there was a position open and I applied for it.
Okay. So how long have you been a road deputy?
I started, I want to say maybe February timeframe, 2015. It was the end of 2014 is when I got hired on full-time, and then I was in the jail maybe 6-7 months before I made it to the road full-time.
Okay, so you haven't always worked the road?
No, sir.
Okay, but you've worked most of the road most of your career?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, were you working as a deputy sheriff on May 3rd, 2021?
I was, yes.
And what shift were you working on that day?
That day I was the 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift.
Okay, and were you working alone or with a partner?
Deputy James Martin was also out with me.
Okay, when you say out with you...
He was in another cruiser.
Okay, that was my question.
Yes,
are you in the same car, or are you single car units?
It's single man car units, yes.
Okay, okay. Did you have the occasion to respond to 6344 Arbor Road, Mechanicstown?
I did, yes.
And tell us how you received notification to respond to that address.
I got a radio call from dispatch saying that there had been a shooting at that residence, and that the female caller had called in advising she had shot the male that had lived there, and I was dispatched to that.
Okay, and so it comes over the airways to your car, to your radio?
Yes, sir. The dispatch puts it out over the radio, and then our mobile battle terminals, our MDTs, we also get a little narration over our computer as to the call notes or whatever that pops up.
Okay. Where were you when you got the radio dispatch?
In the Carroll area.
Okay, so you were on patrol?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so when you received that call, what did you do?
Responded, activated my lights and sirens and responded immediately, got there about as fast as I could.
Okay, and would that be standard procedure with a call like that to activate your sirens and your lights?
Yes, sir, yeah.
Okay, and about how long did it take you to get from where you were to the Arbor Road address?
I want to say myself, it was about roughly 9 minutes from Carrollton.
Okay, and generally, what direction did you go, or what routes did you take to get there, if you can recall?
I remember it being a Mechanicstown address, so I believe I hopped on State Route 39, Salineville, and headed out towards Mechanicstown, and then started heading north. from Mechanicstown.
Okay. And sorry if I asked you this, but do you recall about how long it took you to get there?
I'd say roughly about 9 minutes,
Okay.
give or take.
Okay. That address, what did you find at 6344 Arbor Road when you arrived?
When I first pulled in into the driveway in the front yard off the house, I observed the female. She was currently kneeling over the male that was laying on his back in the yard, and he was laying on his back. I pulled in. She had got up, and then she'd come over to the driveway and stated that he was gone. He's gone. I think she was still on the phone with dispatch at the time. And the sheriff's out here now. Went up, saw him laying in the yard, and asked her to have a seat. She ended up walking back towards the house, but then my focus, I was keeping an eye on the female half when I first arrived, and then primarily all my focus was on him in the front yard.
Okay. Was there anybody else at the scene when you arrived other than yourself and what you saw?
No, sir.
Okay. And what did you first do then after you did that? Were you able to identify the female that you saw?
Yes, sir, I can.
Did you identify her at that time to know who it was?
Yes, I was familiar with both the male and the female half.
Okay. Do you see the female in the courtroom today that you saw when you arrived at 6344 Arbor Road?
I do, sir, yes.
And would you point her out, please?
She's sitting.
Reflect that the deputy pointed at the defendant.
Okay. The 6344 Arbor Road Northeast Mechanicstown address, is that located in the county of Carroll, state of Ohio?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. And so what did you do then?
Oh, I saw him down in the front yard. Noticed that he was injured. Considerable amount of blood on his person.
Okay.
Put personal protective gear on.
Okay. When you say him, were you able to identify male or female?
It was male. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So was it obvious?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dumb question, but necessary question.
No, yes, sir.
Okay. And so you, what did you observe about that person lying there?
He was on his back. He had his right arm was stretched out towards the walkway. He was wearing tennis shoes, shorts. He had a black T-shirt on. Currently, when I got there, the black T-shirt was up towards his shoulders. His eyes were closed. He was already starting to turn a yellowish, bluish color. I couldn't see if he was breathing. I did notice a clean-cut hole in about this area of his chest. And so I'd say the upper right-hand corner of his left side of his chest.
Your Honor, if you let the record reflect, the witness is pointing to that part of his uniform.
Say that part.
The upper right, upper left?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is noted.
Okay. About,
Yes, sir.
okay. So what did you do then?
After I had my gloves on, I attempted to check for a pulse in his neck.
Okay. Why did you put your gloves on?
Because of the amount of blood everywhere. We're just trained at one, crime scene, and then two, possible bloodborne pathogens, just to glove up before first aid.
Okay. So what did you do then after you gloved up?
Checked him for a pulse, didn't feel a pulse. I do remember telling dispatch to go ahead and send the ambulance in. They had an ambulance staged nearby. Normally, we get there first, make sure the scene's safe before medics come in. So I went ahead and said, okay, the male is down in the front yard. Go ahead and send the ambulance EMT crew in. Checked him for a pulse, couldn't find one. I just started doing chest compressions on him. And I told dispatch, hey, let EMTs know he's out here in the front yard. And start chest compressions on him.
Okay. And is that standard procedure?
I would like to say, I wouldn't say it's standard, but normally you get there and you see somebody, you treat the injuries, what have you, best of your ability. Secure the scene until somebody shows up.
So you decided to do CPR on your own?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at that point in time, when you started CPR, where was the defendant?
She had walked back towards the front of the house, and I would say the front door, a rough guess, maybe about 30, 40 feet off to my left. I'm not sure if she went back in the house, but she did come back out, and she was standing over in front of the front door. And at that time, I had asked her what happened. I hadn't moved. I was still standing next to him. Asked her what happened, and then at that time she told me she briefly told me what had happened.
Okay, what'd she tell you?
I asked her what had happened. She said that her and the male had gotten into an argument. He had punched her in her face, so she went and grabbed her rifle. He came back at her, so she shot him.
Okay, and when you learned that information, what, if anything, did you do?
I just said okay and kept working on him.
Okay, and what was the defendant doing at that time?
She was, best of my knowledge, she was still standing over in front of the front door while I was working on him.
Okay, did you observe from the time you got there and the time that you started CPR, did you observe any injuries on the defendant?
I didn't really, when I first got there, she had gotten up under her own power. She did have some blood on her hands. I'm assuming it was from him because she was kneeling next to him, and I didn't see any visible injuries, but again, I didn't specifically pull her aside and here, let me look you over. Like I said, most of my focus was on him, and she did not say, hey, I'm injured, call for an ambulance for me.
Okay, so there there wasn't anything obvious to you that would divert your attention from the male on the ground to the defendant?
No, sir.
Okay, so was the defendant bleeding profusely?
I wouldn't, it looked like he had been. By the time that I arrived, most of the blood had already coagulated on the ground, so he wasn't, it didn't look like any fresh blood was coming from him.
What about the defendant? Was the defendant bleeding profusely that you observed?
No, sir, she was not.
Okay, was she capable of talking?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So about how long were you doing CPR before you were relieved?
Let's see. Deputy Martin arrived on scene. I forget exactly what time. I did have him bring a first aid kit over and one of the bag valve masks. I didn't have any in the cruiser I was in at the time, so I wasn't able to give the male rescue breaths. I was just doing the chest compressions, and then it was shortly after that time, after Deputy Martin had secured the defendant, he jumped in and we started switching out with chest compressions.
Okay, so about how long were you there after Deputy Martin, till Deputy Martin arrived?
I want to say maybe, let's see, I was 16. He got there 3-4 minutes. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. And is Deputy Martin still at the Sheriff's Department?
No, sir, he is not.
Why is that?
He recently deceased.
Okay, he passed away?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you and Deputy Martin then performed first aid?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and while you were performing first aid, were you able to observe what the defendant was doing or where the defendant was?
He actually, I had requested that she come over and just stay nearby. I told her, I said, I understand your daughter's in the house, but because of the circumstances, could you just please stand out here with us so we can keep an eye on you while we're working on the mail here?
Why would you want to do that? Why would you make that request?
Just due to the circumstances, I didn't want her going back into the house and possibly retrieving a firearm or whatever, or running off, just for our safety and then the medics for their safety when they came back in.
Okay, did the defendant comply?
She did, yeah. Deputy Martin advised that he was just detaining her, that she was not under arrest at that time. He said, just due to the nature of this call, I'm just placing handcuffs on you. And then we did have her have a seat over right on the edge of the front porch nearby. And then she had stayed there until the EMT ambulance had arrived. And they came over, tended to her, and then the one medic was assisting me with the male half.
Okay. About how long after Deputy Martin arrived and when you were doing first aid and all that, did the ambulance arrive? If you know.
Roughly maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. When they arrived, was there one ambulance, 2 ambulances, 10 ambulances?
There's one ambulance.
Okay. And what did they do? What did you observe them do when they arrived?
The one medic came over to me. I told him I already started on the male half. Advised I couldn't find a pulse. The rescue breaths didn't appear to be going where they should, down into his lungs. And then the other medic went over and asked Deputy Martin if that was the other party. And the one medic tended to her, asked her if she had any injuries, and then the one medic that was helping me hooked the male half up to I believe it's called an EKG, to check for his pulse and whatnot.
Okay. Did you summons any other assistance to the scene?
Me, no, sir, no. Major Graham had also heard the radio traffic, and he was on his way also.
Okay, so other deputies were responding, but you didn't request any?
No, sir.
Okay, so after EMS arrived, and did they take over working?
The one medic did check the male half, advised it they couldn't find a pulse, so he went ahead and said he's probably deceased. So I told Deputy Martin it's probably going to be a dead on arrival or a code 16, and then it was advised dispatch, okay, it's a dead on arrival, and then that's when we had to county coroner notify.
Okay, is a code 16 the same as meaning dead on arrival?
Yes, sir. It's just code for DOA call.
And is that code that's used in your law enforcement duties?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and why do we use codes and signals to talk?
It's just easier. It's less traffic on the radio. It's easier, more clearly understood than saying it's less likely to be misunderstood.
Fair enough. When you make that radio broadcast that there's a code 16, where does that go, or who are you alerting?
Well, it was dispatching, but then anybody that's on our radio channel, would hear it. So any responding units would hear it also.
Okay. So was there any other deputies that responded?
Major Graham did arrive, and then Sheriff Williams was out sometime later. I'm not really sure of exactly the time frame, but deputy-wise, it was myself, Major Graham, and then Deputy Martin.
Okay. And because there was a code 16, was the coroner alerted?
Yes, sir, he was.
And did you do that?
I had Deputy Martin call over the radio. It was, hey, would you like me to call for him, or do you want to call for him? Nah, it doesn't matter. And then James just went ahead and made it over the radio.
And is it standard operating procedure in your world to request the coroner when you have somebody that's deceased like this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so at that point, did Major Graham arrive?
I don't know exactly what time, but after he was, the EMTs had already checked the male half, and he was found to be deceased. Major Graham arrived after that. Okay.
And so after the radio call went out that the male was deceased, was there any further attempts at life-saving?
No, sir.
Okay. So at that point, what did you do, or what were your responsibilities while you were at the scene? I
went over, I told Major Graham what had happened when I first arrived, and then normally we're trained to, when we're responding to a crime scene, just keep the scene safe so it's not tampered with, and then just start taking pictures to document any evidence. So I went to grab the camera out of the car, started snapping a couple of pictures, and then that's Deputy Martin had went into the house to stay with the defendant's daughter, and I was just standing next to the deceased until Major Graham reassigned me and said, okay, here's your sign-in sheet, start keeping track of who else responds. Okay, so you have a sign-in sheet at a scene like that? Yes, sir. What's the purpose of that? Yeah, documentation of who's there, who arrives, at what time, just so for record keeping. Okay, and is that standard procedure in your world? Yes, sir. Okay, so as part of any investigation further into the circumstances, did you have any involvement in that? No, sir, I did not.
And is that what a road deputy is expected to do, is to do investigations or just?
To a certain degree, until you're relieved. When Major Graham came, he had requested that dispatch go ahead and contact the Ohio BCI&I, Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and have them send investigators out.
Okay, and would that have been by radio?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you would have heard that
Yes,
on
sir.
your radio? All the radios are interlinked with
Yes,
each
sir.
other? Okay. Okay. Going to ask you to think back to the person on the ground that you rendered aid to. When you arrived and while you were rendering first aid, at any point in time, did you see any weapons that were found on or near that person?
I did not know, sir.
Were there any firearms, knives, baseball bats, any weapon of any kind?
No, sir.
Okay. Were there any, did the defendant make any request of you to call an ambulance?
She did not know.
Okay. Did the defendant appear to you to have any gunshot wounds?
No, sir.
Okay. Did she appear to you to have any broken bones?
No, sir.
Okay. Did she appear to be dazed or confused?
No, sir.
Okay. While you were talking with her and while she was outside, did she lose consciousness?
No, sir.
Okay. Was the defendant capable of communicating with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At some point in time, did the defendant leave the scene?
But when the first medic was tending to her, he had told Deputy Martin, hey, if it's okay with you, can we take her over to the ambulance so we can examine her? And then the medic did escort her over to the back of the ambulance where she was initially treated. And then Deputy Martin just advised them, hey, if you need me to take the handcuffs off of her, I can. She hasn't been patted down yet, so we'll just leave those on her. And then after that, I believe she was transported to the hospital.
Okay. But were you involved in any of those decisions?
No,
or make
sir.
any requests?
I was next to the male half pretty much the entire time.
Okay. Did the defendant ask you to give her any first aid?
No, sir.
Okay. And did you give any first aid to her?
No, sir.
Okay. I have no other questions, John. Thank you.
Deputy, when you were dispatched, you were aware that my client had called 911?
I was told that there was a shooting complaint, and it may have went over the radio that she had called 911, but to be honest, as soon as I heard shooting complaint nailed down in the front yard, my mind just kind of.
And you were aware when you were dispatched that my client claimed to be attacked by someone?
Again, it may have went over the radio, but I was focused on address, shooting complaint. I had later came across that when I opened my MDT and stated it. Yeah, she had been punched in the face.
And when you showed up, my client was kneeling by Matt?
She was kneeling next to him in the yard, yes, ma'am.
And she was unarmed?
She was unarmed, yes. The only thing she had on her at the time was the cell phone, and then when I had gotten out of the car, I had asked her, hey, do you have anything on you, and meaning weapons, and she stated she did not.
And she was treated by the medics for her injuries?
Yes, when they arrived, the first medic did check her over and then took her over to the ambulance.
And she went to the hospital for her injuries?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you're trained, I'm sure, on how to respond to domestic violence situations, right?
Yes, ma'am.
There's actually statutes that, regulations and
Yes,
internal protocols for handling domestic violence situations, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you are trained that domestic violence is serious
Yes, ma'am.
and that you're to take it serious.
Yes, ma'am.
And not only is it a serious thing for the person being attacked, but when you show up, you have concerns for officer safety as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're trained that someone trying to leave their abuser, that's the most dangerous time for them?
Objection beyond the scope of direct.
I'll allow it.
I guess it varies by circumstance.
And you carry a gun when you go to a crime scene?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's to protect others.
Yes, ma'am.
It's also to protect yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
If you're attacked by an assailant and seriously harmed and unable to control him, you can protect yourself.
Check. Brown.
I'll allow it.
If somebody attacks me or is attacking somebody else, and I believe myself or that other person's death or serious bodily injury, yes, I am authorized to use force to stop that threat.
And the proximity of the assailant matters to you in determining whether you need to draw your weapon.
Yes, ma'am.
And this actually stems from the idea that an assailant, by the time you determine that they're going to attack you, draw your weapon and fire a round, they can actually close a distance, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's actually called the 21-foot rule.
Yes, ma'am, or the Tula rule. Yes, ma'am.
You're trained that injuries in domestic violence cases can be serious.
Yes, ma'am.
You're trained that strangulation is serious.
Yes, ma'am.
It causes serious physical harm to the person being strangled.
Yes, ma'am.
And strangulation is when, the colloquial way people often say is someone putting their hands on their neck, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Strangulation can cut off oxygen to somebody's brain.
Yes, ma'am.
It can cause damage internally.
Yes, ma'am.
It can cause damage externally, too.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Someone's head being bashed into the wall, that's also serious.
I would say yes, ma'am.
That can cause a concussion.
Possible, yes, ma'am.
Check.
You may approach. Okay, so at this point, I'll sustain that objection. Go ahead and ask.
Having your head bashed into the wall can cause serious injuries,
It's possible that it can, yes, ma'am.
internal and external.
Yes, ma'am.
Bruising that lasts for a couple weeks, pretty serious bruising.
Yes, ma'am, I would agree.
Being punched repeatedly in the face by a man, that is serious too.
Yes, ma'am.
It can cause both serious external injuries and potentially internal ones.
Yes, ma'am.
If a man hits a woman once, they can hit her again, right?
No, ma'am.
They hit her once, they can't hit her again?
Again, it depends on the circumstances. Why would he be striking her to begin?
You've dealt with repeat offenders?
I have, yes.
In your training for officer safety, if you know that an assailant beat up another officer, there's a chance they could beat up you too.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last
For
part.
officer safety, if you're aware that someone beat up another officer before, that can cause concern for you that they could beat you up too.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You saw the decedent when you showed up?
Mr. Mott?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I want you to take a look at my client. Is Matthew Mott bigger than my client?
Yes, he is.
Is Matthew Mott a man?
Yes, he is.
Is my client a woman?
Yes, ma'am.
One moment, Your Honor. No further questions.
Yeah, man. I have no questions, Your Honor.
Okay, Deputy Licht, thank you. You may step down. State of Ohio, at this point today, do you anticipate recalling Deputy Licht?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, then you are excused for the day. Thank you.
Sir.
Okay, here's what I want to do at this point. Before we get to another witness, I do want to take a brief break, long enough for everybody to go out, get a little refreshed, come back in and be ready to go. So 2:25, we'll be back in and ready to go. I don't know what that is. I'm assuming that was from our air conditioning issues, or heater issues, so at least I hope, because it sounded like somebody fell. So we're going to take a recess until 2:25. We'll be back in. So jury, you are released right now.